Okay, everybody, welcome back to Wesley the Writer. I'm Wesley, and today we're going to talk about integrity in the artistic process. Today's topic is definitely a topic that I had to spend the most amount of time on, primarily because integrity in itself, in the view of an artist, is something that is innocent in the beginning and becomes perverted as you seek gain from your art. When you seek gain from something that you once spent the most time not necessarily financially engaged in, it it causes your work to suffer in meaning, not in quality, mind you, because let's face it, the majority of what we see in Hollywood these days is just so bleeding edge and everything is so saturated and colorful and your graphics are so awesome looking even. But the thing is, modern films suck. Modern storytelling, in a sense, just sucks. You do have your outliers, especially people like, let's just throw names out there. George Martin, you have, um, well, he's just more prolific these days than a lot of the other ones, or more profound. It would probably be the best way to put it. I don't know. Um, you have Andrei Sapkowski, who did the Witcher series, and you have they're starting to bring back the Lord of the Rings. Okay, so my point is that, well, those translations from book to movies is one thing, but just the storytelling aspect of it all in the first place, it's just off. Have y'all not noticed that? We're gonna talk about it today. We're gonna talk about philosophy and the modern story. Um, when it comes down to philosophy, people haven't spent enough time really studying philosophy. I feel they premise their stories based off of some quick Google searches that they might have made. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, especially if you're just starting out and you just want to hurry up and get your story out there. But your story suffers meaning when you do that. I mean, if you don't give proper caution and thought to the mind of the person that you're mimicking or trying to recreate their philosophy in your story without understanding the mindset of the person themselves, or rather studying any of their work, it becomes a bit forced. We'll talk about that too. We're going to talk about how to say something in your story and how to make you come out in your story. Like everything that you are, your belief system, your morality, and, based off of that specifically, who you are is what should matter when putting your work out, not what you're trying to get. Let's get into it. I liked Twilight. There, I said it. I said it. And yeah, I'm gonna get a little bit of side-eyed glances at whoever listens to this podcast from now on. But I'll tell you why I like Twilight and what I expected out of it from a visual medium, and what I didn't get from it from a philosophical story view, if that makes sense. Okay, let's just get into it. I enjoyed Twilight, and I had to write a paper on Twilight during my film school days, and the paper was supposed to be written as like, how would we change the ending to Twilight, and or the ending to our favorite story. I thought about Twilight and how to finish it the right way for a long time. One of the things that really threw me off with Twilight was the fact that the ending was so not real that it made the film just feel fake. Everything that we were leading up to, all the tension, all of the relationships, everything that we were hoping that the story would be, we finally get to the climax of the thing, and what do we see? We see this battle. There's a bunch of beheading. Some wolves are eating people. And just as our heroine comes in and, witnesses the end of her life, I guess that's what that was supposed to, be. Everything just snaps back, none of it really happened, and they can all peacefully walk away. Everybody's happy. The end. And it made me feel like I wasted my entire life getting to that point. All the movies I was so invested in, they had all the promotions, Team Edward, Team Jacob, because everybody was like, oh, I want to have, I want to be in this quote. I hope he really, gets the girl, blah, blah, blah. Never really happened, even in the books. So it was kind of dumb if you think about it from a marketing perspective or from a fan perspective, because like you already knew what was going to happen. It was just a matter of watching it. But, it still generated enough hype. It got me interested and invested into it. So I can't say it was completely dumb. But it wasn't really that, engaging as... Anyway, I'm rambling. All right. So I spent not very long coming up with a better ending to Twilight. And I remember while I was doing the paper, it was one of those moments where I began to reflect on what really makes a good story good. The conflicts and all of the action was only one piece of it, but there was something underneath all of that. It was like a belief system almost, like something that we were supposed to be learning about or had some, deeper knowledge about without even really studying it for real. An awareness that was almost colloquially shared through the medium. That was the subplot. And the subplot of a film, a story in general, is supposed to drive home a philosophical narrative or some type of belief system underneath what the plot is. It's the subtext of it all. And when we tell stories, no matter how complicated or simplistic they are, we need to have in mind that we're writing with a particular belief system in mind. We have our own morals. We have our own belief structures. We're not complete atheists, as Jordan Peterson likes to say. We're people who have these preconceptions about the world based off of our nature and nurture. And when we put that into perspective in storytelling, we're talking about writers who write because they have a underlying emotional drive to put their story out. When they put their story out, they're putting themselves into their story, their own belief systems and structures, what they love and what they aspire to be, their passions and all other determinants that drive us to achieve those goals that we set out to achieve. When Stephanie Meyer wrote that book, when she came out with Twilight, it was a story that she fantasized about in a more erotic way, where she had these fantasies that she wanted to enact and all these things. And so for her own personal erotica, that worked. But she wanted to make the story into something that everybody could read and not, feel grossed out about, I guess. And it just became a phenomenon. Then, of course, 50 Shades of Green came after, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Twilight in itself is a representation of her emotional state based off of her passion for whatever it was that she was really trying to get into in her bedroom. And as weird as that sounds, it's really an important part in how we go about storytelling. We have to dig that deep in order to get those stories out and to really tell something about the story. Like to actually have character interactions that matter, not just events that occur along a timeline, and we just have to all react to the actions that come with that. There should be consistency in our plot. We shouldn't deviate from the point of the work we're trying to make. We should instead enforce what our original plot is telling us from scene to scene, from chapter to chapter. We are responsible for how we tell the story. And I think that it's something that a lot of us as creators should take note in. And I think for the integrity of an artist, in a sense, we should put our passions and stuff into our work in that sense where we are not deviating from the assignment. When we understand what we're putting out, like talking about putting out for genre or for subgenres, whatever. Like I said in the other podcast episode, we're not writing for the genre. We're not writing to have people to instantly put our work into a category. We're writing so that the work places itself into the category. When we have that mindset to just wander with our minds and to put our passions and stuff on paper, in any type of story that we want to put that in, to put the plots together, to put the stories together, we can't deviate from what we know. It's best to write and do what you know than to try to jump into what you don't know with the mind to try to learn it as you go. Because when you do that, you cheapen the experience. You're not being authentic with yourself. The work that you put out is just a gobbledygook mess of ideas that you thought were cool at one point. And there's no cohesion with the plot and the character development, and story structure is all jacked up. It becomes a mess. And so to avoid that, you have to understand who you are as a person. You can't just guess how you are. Like, if you're into turtles, you can write a piece about, or dealing with how turtles or how animals interact with each other in nature. That part you would know. To be, more vague with that, you don't necessarily have to write a story about turtles. But anyway, you get my point. All I'm saying is, if you spend the time understanding who you are as a person, what your interests are, what you like, and your work should reflect you, not your team. Your team for pre-production is to put together what you envisioned and send it into production. It's not to start changing elements of a story. And that's where directors need to take note, especially when you're talking about putting on a adaptation to, say, a book or a novel or whatever. You're not there to tell your story. You're there to enhance the story and worldview of the writer who wrote that piece. If it is you, then you're closer to it than anyone else. But if it's someone else, you have to understand where that person's mind is. And if they didn't do a good job on their part of really explaining what the story is really about, giving you proper insight into the subtext of their work, then that's their fault. And I can't fault you for wanting to do something on your own. So you just need to be able to say, hey, this is not what we should do. Speaking in a sense of, we shouldn't go and change somebody else's work and mess it up unless it's warranted. And we'll get into that later. If the passion was put behind a project and we have it here and it's looking good, let's just put together what was intended from the beginning. Let's tell the story in the way to where the proper subtext comes through, and we're not just trying to guess around the ideas of what should be. Let's break away from that. And let's actually get into how our morale and that of our surroundings influences our work. When I was coming up, I actually tried to jump into the military. It was not fully successful. I ended up hurting myself and I got out. And when I got out during basic training, okay, insert laughter here. Ha ha, Wesley didn't make it. Anyway, when I got out, I realized that I had spent the majority of my free time that I could find while in training writing. And I wrote my first script. I wrote The Diary of Mara Grayson. And I didn't have an idea as to distribution. I didn't have an idea as to, any other type of, any type of production, whatever. I just wrote the thing. I wrote it, and when I got out, I found some editing software. No, that's right. I got into Word. I got into Microsoft Word. I found a video on how to do formatting for screenplays, and that's what I did. I formatted it to the proper dimensions of a screenplay after just jotting down all of my notes onto paper. I did that, and I realized that it was a passion project. That was just the first draft. I didn't go into any second draft stuff, but I was really happy about it, and I sent my first draft out to be read at some open mics and all of that. And I was really liking the feedback that I was getting. But I stopped there because I didn't know how to continue in the process. And while I had wrote that, I realized, though, that just being on an island away from social media, keeping up with my own writing process and not trying to jump into 8 different philosophies on writing, just sticking true to the process of getting it written out on pieces of paper and having something physical in hand to edit later really helped me get to putting everything I had into the story so that for later use I could go back and edit as needed, not to sit and wait and try to guess more and try to find other ways that aren't authentic to actually telling a story to get the story out there. Not listening to every writing podcast available just to get an idea as to how to be a writer. None of that matters when you put something out first. Putting your story to paper first, without going to a film school, without doing anything else, is probably one of the best pieces of advice I think anyone could give you. Don't spend your time trying to get it perfect. Don't worry about your character interactions or how silly it all sounds or how short or how long the script is. See, when we think about all that stuff, it causes us not to have integrity. It causes us to want to be perfect. And when you're trying to be perfect, you're not able to allow for mistakes. The only thing that you're allowing for is for procrastination, because you're going to sit there for an entire 2 years looking at one story that should have already been made into a book and put on shelves, or a screenplay on your website to be sold off or to be put into production. You wasted your time trying to be something that you're not. No one is perfect. I need to put that in exclamation points or something. You're not perfect. You're not going to be perfect. The goal of writing is to not be perfect, but to be consistent. And when you're consistent, then you're able to get work. You're able to get work done. You're able to work in teams. You're able to stick to deadlines and not make arbitrary, made-up timelines for yourself and your future or for your career. If you spend more time writing sentences every day than complaining about how you don't have the proper knowledge on what story circle project template thing you should be putting your story into, then you're going to have an entirely finished novel or screenplay in a shorter amount of time than it took anyone else to do it who did try to be perfect. And that's just the difference between a writer and a poser. If you sit and try to think of the best perfect philosophically deep story possible to mankind ever without consulting something like a first draft that you've already written, then you're going to be wasting your time. And that's not what we're in the business of. We're not in the business of wasting our time. We're in the business of getting work done. With deadlines in mind, make sure that you have a deadline so that you're not sitting and waiting or procrastinating we need deadlines in order to finish our work. And the more that we have deadlines set, or the more deadlines that we set, the better off we are as writers, because we're able to set limits to our wandering. And we don't want to wander. That takes us out of our integrity. That takes us out of consistency. That doesn't allow us to complete things, even though the memes are there where writers never really want to write for real, or they'll start to write a project and 10 years pass and then it finally gets done. That's not indicative of a good writer. That's just the laziness of a person not willing to get it wrong. Get your projects out. Don't get them perfect. So here's why I really made this podcast, or rather why I made this episode of this podcast. I make my stories reflect who I am, what I study, what I'm interested in, what I'm passionate about. I make my stories about my experience in life. It's what helps me get my work out. Once I get my work out, I feel better about who I am and more engaged with my belief structure, more familiar with my mindset. You know, it's more therapeutic for me to write my emotions and my feelings out. And when I do that in this way, without the perfection mindset, I find that I'm able to tell better stories because I'm writing from my own personal experience, not from some preconceived or pre-made thought process on someone else's blog or something. I'm not trying to be coy with my work or trying to be I'm not trying to be something I'm not. When you go to learn something you have an interest in, you learn it because you choose to learn it because you're interested in the topic. But then you shift your mindset after you learn about it, or when you have an interest in it, you switch it to studying it. And when you study something that you're interested in, it could turn into a passion or not. But you typically want to use that passion behind studying something to continue to get deeper and deeper into that particular thing. And it's sort of the same when it comes down to writing. For me, I study the Bible. And so because I study the Bible, I'm able to put a lot of biblical references into my work in different ways, because that just, for one, helps me get more intimate with my studies, but two, it allows me to retain that knowledge that I've gained through studying my work and really make sense of it in a more tangible way, in a more physical way, because then I have a whole story that I can put my hands to, and it's something that I'm passionate about in that sense. I can go from there and start editing something like that, because it's something that I'm passionate about. I'm not doing it or writing it because I'm not passionate or because I'm trying to fit to someone else's agenda. I'm doing it this way because it's something that is me. It's a part of me that you say it's your baby. Well, it's more than that. It's not something that you create in that sense. You could call it that, I guess. I guess it's easier to say that. But for me, it's just me. It's that scene with Mr. Smith in The Matrix where he's talking about making clones of himself. You know, me too. It's like that. You have to ask how relevant your plot is to who you are. Like, really, who are you? Why are you trying to be a writer? What makes you passionate enough to put your pen to paper to write the letters that pop in your head? Who are you? When you are able to understand that part of you, like who you are and why you're even here, your purpose, what are your interests? You know, when you find out what you are about, that's when you're able to build the relevance to your work that people can't just take away from you because they didn't like what they saw or because you represent a mindset that they don't or whatever. You know, when you're authentic to yourself and what you do, that's when your work really shines. It's not about getting the format right. It's about getting the subtext to your work right. And the only way that you really build subtext, in my opinion, is you put yourself into the work and you tell the story you want to tell. When we're talking about cultural relevance, we're talking about something that we have to be mindful of, but not solely dependent on in your work. It's not something that you can, or rather have to be completely mindful of, but it's something that is there to help you sell your work after you finish writing it. You know, people will come up with their own opinions and their own thought processes, their own little niche groups of ideology. You know, you don't have to worry about all that stuff. The only thing you have to worry about is just getting your work done and letting the chips lie where they fall as per you finishing that work. You know, don't limit yourself to being noticed in the public eye or having everyone admire your work. You're going to have haters on either spectrum, you know, political, scientific, religious, whatever group you can imagine. Everyone is the villain to someone else's story. You know, you're never going to be the good guy for everyone. There's always going to be someone to whom you harmed by doing something. And people like to say that's not true, especially with people who are more profound in society or who have more of a presence, more of a celebrity. You know, but even they can have their narrative shifted. Look at Elon Musk. Guy's a saint, but everybody who doesn't agree with him buying Twitter is calling him the devil. You know, it's stuff like that. You don't have to worry about it. Just do you, bro. Get the work done, and then we'll talk about it after it's finished. Just like Twilight. That movie sucked, but I loved it. In conclusion, let yourself love what you watch. And don't be a slave to the mindsets of others. You know, just enjoy your life. Enjoy what inspires you. If it's a crappy movie, if it's a bad song, whatever. Get out there, enjoy it. Start writing to that stuff because it's who you are. It's what you're into. At that moment, you've been given this revelation from the heavens, you know? Write. Get it written. Understand where you are mentally and how you can draw from the emotions you find while you're in your zone, you know? You're a conscious creature. You're a conscious creature. So enjoy that part. You can get yourself into a mental tizzy if you want to. I hope not. And if you find yourself falling deeper and deeper into some mental drain, that's the time you really need to reach out to someone and ask for some help. I mean, they're not a sponsor, but BetterHelp is definitely there for you. And you also have hotlines and stuff that you can call. But, away from the negatives of, your mental state, you want to focus more on what makes it positive to get you into the zone to write what you feel like writing. The emotional parts of that. If there's something that angers you, find yourself a anchor to write from in that anger, and just go to town. Treat the pen and paper like a punching bag. Get it out there. Because when you do that and you see what you wrote and you have those emotions in your hand, you can better edit that than, say, letting it fester in your brain where you can't actually attack it. The only thing you can do is come up with head fantasies and canons, and then you take out those emotions because you wear them on your sleeve, on the people around you. That's not healthy, and you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't live that way. You're probably an interesting person. I don't know you personally, but if you write something, turn it into a book, I have better chances of getting to know you than, say, one quick Facebook post about how mad you are about something. So get to writing, put your emotions down, and then when you have that down, then go into formatting and editing. Really focus on why you wrote that. Let that be integral to you developing your story. And you'll notice that as you continue along that path, you're not writing just for writing's sake. You're writing for yourself. You're writing for who you are. You're putting everything about you onto the paper. Your job, your frustrations with that job, the family life, if that's not going good, or even if it is going good, it doesn't have to be as positive or negative, as you need it to be in the moment for your story. If anything, look at all of those experiences as inspiration for your next piece, and stay positive. Writers have a tendency to get so negative and depressed that drugs and alcohol becomes regular, and blaming others becomes the norm. Don't do that, because it's all on you how you get your work out. No one's holding a proverbial or physical gun to your head and making you write. And if they are, you need to inform the authorities. Be who you are and get the work done. That's how you maintain integrity as an art. Coming up, I've been working on a short story. I've titled that short story The Tavern, and it's about, well, we'll get into that. I'll be posting to Podbean every Friday. I'm going to try to shoot for Monday once things cool off with the job. We're going into the summer months, so it's going to be pretty tight with the scheduling, but I will remain consistent. Once I get these episodes edited, I'll be uploading them. So just stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy. I'm also working on a website where I'll be posting the some of the work that I've been working on with the podcast, such as scripts and other short stories, books. I'll be selling books from there too, most likely through Amazon. So get ready for that. Once I get finished with this one book, with all of the short stories in it, I'll post that for sale if you're interested. And we'll just keep it going from there like that. My goal is to get a team together so that I can actually put this stuff up and really get into um, my audio dramas as soon as possible. But I can't do that by myself. When I'm ready to, I'll put out, the APB on editor and some talent and stuff. So if you're interested in that, keep an ear out for it, and just shoot me some messages if you find yourself willing to work with me in that regard. Um, and yeah, so all right, I'm out. This has been episode 6. I hope you guys enjoyed. Um, I'm really passionate about what I do. I feel I have felt for the longest time that I wasn't going to be able to do what I wanted until I was completely free from work and all that other stuff. But after hearing the testimonies from so many other people, I feel like it's a waste of my talent. It's a waste of my talent to just sit on what I can do. And I'm just going to keep on going, keep on doing stuff like this, the small things, and hopefully, prayerfully, they'll grow into bigger things. So I appreciate all of you. I thank you for listening, and I will catch you guys next time. Later.